There you go.
You're away.
We're live. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of YouTube land, Ruck This, and the Irish Rugby Banter Group, you are very welcome. It is Thursday. It is your weekly dose of Mauls, Balls and All. It's 8:30. Joining me this evening is Richard Holland. We have Dara Weston. We have also Joe Shep, who is head of live stream solutions and also doing a Lions preview show. And then obviously when the games come on, there's going to be a post preview show. Joe Shep is ahead of the Lions Roar series. Joe, how the hell are you? Are you well?
Absolutely great. Buzzing after today. A couple of surprises, but we'll get on to that.
Yeah, we'll get on to that, yes. And also joining us is the for the day that's in it is an ex-Ireland Leinster. Now, I know, Nick, the last time you're on, I forgot to mention you played for Newcastle and Wasps, and you happened to win the Premiership with Newcastle in the 1997-98 season. So my apologies for that. But welcome back, Nick Popplewell. How the hell are you doing, buddy? Are you well? Good time.
Good as gold, yeah. Exciting day for everyone. It was kind of a bit strung out on the old. Well, we were watching on Sky YouTube or something, but God, 15,
Sky YouTube.
I know, don't ask me. Whatever. 15 Irish men.
Yeah, we'll come on to that, Nick. Now, I just want to mention, right, for people who don't know, Nick Popplewell, who you see right there, was a member of the 1993 Lions squad who went to New Zealand. Headed by Jeff Cook, Ian McGeehan, Dick Best was also involved, heavily involved. It was captained by Gavin Hastings. Unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan. 2-1 to New Zealand. Nick, what do you have fond memories of that tour being a line, and you've got your number, you've got your cap, you've got your jersey? Go ahead. Your memories of that.
I think the memories up to the last minute or the last day where I was never going to be included on it because in those days the Lions team was announced the day after the last. It would have been 5 nations, I suppose. It wasn't 6 nations. So and each country had a selector. I don't know whether they still do now, or maybe not a selector, but some kind of a person anyway who maybe did some kind of a nudge here and there, and that was Ken Reid, who's passed away. But all along that season, or certainly the 3 or 4 months up to, Ken would say, lads, listen, relax, none of you have a hope in hell of getting onto this thing, so enjoy it and don't even be thinking about Lions. And we were quite dreadful, but lo and behold, England came over to Lansdowne Road the night before the team was being announced, and we throttled them. I think we beat them 19-3 or something, or 19-7, which was totally against the run of play. And we actually hammered them off the park. Now, I think an awful lot of that was you probably had 15 or 20 English expecting to be picked in the Lions, and maybe they were trying to safeguard themselves. But obviously we didn't give a SH1T because as far as we were concerned, if we got injured, great, just another extra week or 2 without having to train, So... The next day, I can't remember. Some people, I heard Ian Evans talking today, and he said, "Oh, we got telegraphs." I can't remember getting a telegraph. I would imagine Ken Reid probably rang me and basically said, "Listen, you're not going to believe this, but don't ask me how." They had to bring somebody along, and they decided to bring 2 of you, myself and Mick Galway. But it just happened very, very fast, very, very quickly, and fantastic. And then I suppose the beauty of a Lions trip is, it's probably easier. It's easier to get picked than not get picked, really, when you think you're bringing nearly 40 out of maybe 4 teams, which is 40 out of 60. So you must be fairly shite, like most of us, I suppose, not to be picked on it. But then once the training started, it's Geach come up to me and McGee came up to me and said, "Listen, it starts now. It's level playing field. So just you do what you can, and we'll be picking on merit, not on name." So I was again. Jason Ennan would have been obviously probably the man in the chair. I didn't talk to Jason really for the first, I think, 4 or 5 weeks of the tour, and during training, for the simple reason I said, fuck this. I'm going to try and have a good shot at this. And I was very, very lucky. I ended up getting all the 3 tests, and, the crack was just absolutely fabulous now, in fairness. But it shows the dynamic.
Didn't you, Nick? Sorry to cut across you.
Yeah.
Didn't you get a recognition or something for player of the tournament or upcoming player or something like that? Wasn't that given to you? Or am I completely wrong?
Could have been. I did reasonably well now, in fairness. I did no, but I mean, no, I did listen. There was no expectation, but I said it was just. It's a clean sheet, and I'm sure it'll be the same now. So it'll be interesting to see, who's going to be picked. Now, I suppose the run-in with us was probably, I presume, was 5 or 6 weeks, or 5 or 6 or 7 weeks. Now you probably, what's the dynamics of it? You probably have 2 weeks, and then you're into the first test. So is that it? There's 10 matches, isn't there?
There's something like that. Joe Sheppy, you could probably answer that. Go on. Do you know that?
The warm-up game is the 20th of June, and then they go a couple of days against the Pumas, and then they go on the Monday, and then the first game is back end of June. So, but once they wrap in, it's every Wednesday and Saturday after that. So it is pretty intense. 3 tests, 4 franchises, and then another 2 games. So yeah, you're right, Nick. 10 in total, including the Pumas game. It's quite thick and fast, really, once they get in there.
All right. And Joe, sorry, while I have you on there, Joe, let's talk about. I just want a brief kind of a brief kind of reaction for the first question I'd ask. Joe, I kind of know your answer to this because we've spoken about this. Maro Itoje as captain, Joe. An obvious decision, an obvious choice, or a necessary one?
I think when Caelan got injured, I think it was going to be between Maro and Caelan. It's as simple as that. There are other people who could be captains. Dan Sheehan could be a captain. I think it's too early, though, from a Lions perspective. And I think there's, and Nick will tell you more about this. I think that the dynamics, it's like picking a player. It's like this back row now. Because Caelan's not there, the whole thing has changed. So the dynamics is not necessarily that you pick the best player. It's who fits in around what the coach is then going to do. And you also got to pick against the tactics. Who you're going to play. So it's not always the best player in the best position for me to do. But from the captain, you got your mate Finn Russell, brilliant, gifted player.
What you going to? Listen, I knew he had to be brought.
But you wouldn't have him as a captain. I wouldn't have any as a captain because of the temperament. So when you come back to Maro or Caelan, when Caelan got injured and wasn't fucking going to go, it came down then really to somebody who is player of the tournament last time, player of the tournament. He's on his 3rd Lions tour. He's very, very well thought of. Actually, his penalty count thing is complete and utter bollocks when you look at the stats. Since 2021, when he had 5 penalties against Wales, they've dropped dramatically, and no more than Joe McCarthy, and no more than Porter. So actually, you've got somebody who is a gifted player. An extremely gifted player. He's a leader. He's a people's person. Players played the tournament last time. I don't think there was anybody else other than him and Caelan in the thing. And when Caelan went, it was down to Maro. Simple as that for me.
Well, it had to be either English or Irish because,
numbers.
30 players. And I know when we were, I think Gavin Hastings was the captain when we played.
Yes.
And I think because it was such a huge contingent of English there, it was quite difficult to try and, keep them under control as such. Now, on the other end of that too, there was 4 or 5 Scots who were on the Wednesday side, and they basically went off piece straight away. Once they got a touch that they weren't going to be on the Saturday side, they just, they went on their own separate tour, which kind of was a huge distraction. And it's something that's why the Wednesday side, it's paramount that they're organized, they're happy. If they start folding and getting disinterested, it makes it very, very difficult.
Is there a split in the camp then, Nick?
Well, there has to be. When you think about it,
I know, but does it manifest itself?
Well, I mean, there's guys playing every Wednesday. There's guys playing every Saturday. So guys playing every Wednesday, we're all human. They're going to have a scoop or two probably on the Wednesday, which means they're going to be on their own. Lads who are playing the Saturday aren't going to be going out for a pint on a Wednesday or a Thursday. And then obviously, you can get clicks arrive. That's why I think Donal Lennon, who I heard him talking today, like Donal I think he was on 3 Lions tours. I don't think he, as good as he was, he never actually got a test. But he literally, they used to call him Donald's Donuts, I think was the name. But he organised the Wednesday side. And they were respectful. They had a great time amongst themselves. Grant, the odd times there's an injury. One of them had to go up and then somebody came down. But he literally marshalled what was happening on every Wednesday, which was a huge, huge factor.
Yeah. Donald's Donuts. Jesus, sounds like a dodgy porn movie, Nick. But listen, come here to me.
You know, Bert.
Nick,
you know.
Maro Itoje, Nick. Out of necessity, well deserved, or got it because Caelan Doris, is injured?
I think the pivotal thing there was, he's had 2 tours under his belt, 2 Lions tours, and that in itself, I mean, there's a huge amount of pressure. I think if I was Caelan Doris, no, I can't say that because everyone wants to be captain, or everyone wants to play for the Lions, everyone wants to be captain. But I
know what you're going to say.
I think, I always, and he's a great chap. I always feel he's a little bit uncomfortable when he's, when he is captain. He leads by example. But I mean, captaincy is an awful lot more, obviously, than just wearing the jersey and shouting and screaming and corralling the players. You're dealing with media, you're dealing with maybe a few little bits that are happening on the side, and I just think it can be a bit of a distraction.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Richard, before I ask you, just a few comments coming in from people watching. Megan Augusta, how are you, Megan? Evening, gents. Matt Boland, being the usual, yes. Hello, Matt. How the fuck are you on this evening? Yes, good man, Matt. Keeping up to form. Alan Dorman, hello from Lanzarote. Hello, Alan. Always good to have you. Mike Reedy, you did more than reasonably well, Nick. You had an outstanding tournament. There you go, Nick.
Fair play.
Yeah. Mike's old, so he'd remember that.
Well.
So mine, I don't.
But you were on the cold front.
Mike was around when the Civil War was going on. Sonia Croak, evening all. Hi, Sonia, how are you? Luke Conway, sorry, I'm like, that's not a problem.
Well, now that Luke's arrived, we can start the show, so.
We can start the show properly, yes. Okay, absolutely, yes. Hello, Luke Conway.
Until you arrived.
Yes, good man, Luke. Glad to have you with us, Luke. Richard Holland, Maro Itoje, as I've asked Nick and Joe, given the job out of necessity, is it deserved? Now I don't. You know my feelings. You know it. I put it in the group. Joe, you know it. I'm not a particular fan of Maro Itoje. Right? Sorry, Richard. Was it deserved? Out of necessity? If Doris wasn't injured, would Itoje have gotten that job?
A little bit of all of the above, I think. It was either going to be him or Doris. Now I feel sorry for Doris because it's just you can't get any worse timing, and he's never injured. That's the unfortunate thing about Doris, that he's very rarely injured. But yeah, look, I don't dislike Itoje. I think he is a captain. He's a good captain. He's a leader. It's what we need. But as I think Nick alluded to there, you need to be able to deal with the media. He can do that. We know he can do that. And also he's experienced. This is what his 3rd tour. So he's been there. He's done that. He knows what to do. He knows the lay of the land. So to have him there, even if he hadn't been captain, he would have been something akin to a vice captain. So it's a natural progression, and it's unfortunate that Doris got injured, but I think Itoje will be a good captain for the Lions.
All right. Okay, thanks, Richard.
I think he's kind of calmed. I'm just saying, I think Itoje, like, he was a total knob for a few years because, all this high-fiving and yapping. But I think he's calmed down since then. He's just it's just a little bit more sensible, a little bit more placid, and just concentrating on the core, the core values or whatever. He came across as a total twat, really. And he certainly, if it was 2 years ago, you wouldn't be. I couldn't see him getting the captain because he's just a twat, and behaving like that. Again, you're trying to get a crew of 37 behind you, and it doesn't help. That's why I'd love to throw money on that young fella from Northampton, Pollock. I'd say I have a feeling he could be odds-on favourite to be carrying the Lion from day one to day, whenever it is, because
we will come on to him, Nick. We will come on to him. And the other thing, Nick. Sorry, go on, Richard.
No, just and it's a personal preference, but I always prefer my captain to be a forward. I don't know why, but I've always preferred my captain to be a forward.
Yeah, because you were a bloody forward yourself.
Well, yeah, there's a lot. That's a lot to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But Nick, you were talking about Itoje being a twat, and I totally agree with you. It was also the shouting, Nick.
Absolutely.
At line out calls.
Clive Woodward actually, I think, nearly took him aside and just said, he was irritating his own. You know what I mean? As such. Now you can say the same about bloody Pollock. I mean, Pollock is, geez, you see him playing, but Christ, he just seems to come up with it. You know what I mean? Now it's only a matter of time before he gets planted or something. But I mean, the sheer, and I think Mitchell was saying, I think he was coming. Did anyone watch the Bristol? Bristol Northampton there 2 weeks ago. Did you? That was where they hammered Bristol. No, there was, but Mitchell was on and he said, "Listen, this chap Pollock," he says, "what's he like?" He said, "Really, he's an absolute knob, but he is so infectious in the he's just literally, he leads by example. He just does the most bizarre things, and because no one has a clue, I suppose the beauty of being a young chap like him, there's very little video footage on him. People aren't necessarily that sure what he's going to do. So, you can't just plan to kind of suppress him for a whole match. Why? Because you probably don't have enough air miles to see,
Imagine Pollock on the same pitch as Johnny O'Connor, Trevor Brennan, or the Claw.
Oh, Jesus.
On the same pitch, as long as they're on the same side, it'd be all right.
If there aren't opposing sides, Nick, that's
could be a problem.
With Trev, he doesn't have to be on the pitch; he could be in the stands as well.
He could be. Well, this is true. Yes, Dara. Sorry, I haven't asked you.
I would agree with what Mr. Popplewell has said there, and I would say there's still a fairly strong odor of twat off Itoje. To start the Six Nations stamping on Mac Hanson's hand, he was lucky that wasn't a penalty. I think Joe cited the stats about penalties. I think it's more he's getting away with a lot more now. He's being a bit cleverer, but he's still, I'd say hot-headed, and that's always a risk because the Aussies will wind him up. The first Lions captain I've ever seen wearing a pearl earring at the announcement.
Something unbelievable? I hate saying unbelievable, but I thought it was he had an earphone in or something, and maybe it had moved. And then I said, "Jesus, okay, fair enough."
I thought it was the same from the Something About Mary.
Not very British.
Yeah, the amount of times I got sent that picture today of Ben Stiller with the jizz hanging from his ear.
Giggity.
But Darren, to come back to it,
if Caelan had been fit, he was nailed on. I think, right? Because look, Andy sees him all the time. Andy's always in his ear, so I don't think Andy was as biased as the Gatland years, but generally you'll go with, if you're going to be the coach, you'll go with a captain. The only criticism people really have about Caelan is that sometimes he's not vocal enough with the referees. But I think he would have been a good captain for the Lions. So I do think to a certain extent, Itoje kind of, was runner-up and then promoted, kind of,
All right.
Once Caelan got injured, he got pushed in.
Okay. Now, the actual the selection themselves. Okay, Joe. I'm looking at the team here in front of me, the forwards and the backs. let me just have a quick look at the breakdown. There's 15 Irish, 13 English, 8 Scots, and 2 Welsh. I'm actually surprised there's 2 Welsh. Tomas Williams. Why is he gone? So for you, Joe, who are the surprises, and who did you think, Joe, when you saw the names coming out, when Ian Evans was announcing the squad, and he went from the forwards to the backs, and he named them all? Was there anyone you're kind of going, why isn't what the hell happened to surprises, inclusions, and surprise omissions, Joe?
I think surprisingly, well, first of all, it fucking was pissing me off the amount of time it was taking. It was pissing me off that he didn't do it, and my OCD was kicking in. He wasn't doing them in the correct order of fucking props. Okay, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Then,
yes.
So, and it was backwards and forwards, and but it was the theatre, I suppose. Omissions. I think Scott Cummings was a good call to put in. George Martin unlucky. James Ryan, nice to see him back. I didn't think he was going to make it, but it was good. I was surprised that, and I'm glad because he was my favourite player, but Ty Furlong made the cut, because I just don't think he's been, especially since he's come back from the injuries, he just hasn't been there as much. But you've got Ferguson, you've got Big Will Stewart there. So again, it's pretty samey on the hookers. Ronan Gallagher getting in. I didn't think Jamie George was going to make it. I just didn't. I just think it's just too far for him. And then the back row completely had to change, because with Caelan out, and I mean, this comes back to Dan. We won't know until the warm-up games or the franchise games and the test games exactly what Andy is playing at, because Conan coming in is brilliant. I like Jack Conan an awful lot. I think Byrne will play 6. So I think the dynamics of who he brought in there for the back row, the biggest changes though with Mac Hansen. He's been going backwards for me for the last 2 years. It just really, I just don't get it. When you look at somebody like Darcy Graham, who I do like a lot, Freeman, and the other one really was Elliot Daly coming in. And I've been trying to think this afternoon why. I mean, Elliot, this is his third Lions test, played 3 in the first one, 2 last time round. So this is his third tour. We all know that he's absolutely a master of the long kicks, and there's nobody else really in that 38 outside of him who can do just that as well. Tactically, he's very versatile. Can play centre. He's still got the speed. Play centre, full back, wing. He's not going to be the test in that test starting, but he's, if you get a number of injuries, you don't want to be hoofing a whole pile of, and I think there will be other players coming, reserves brought in. But I think Elliot Daly and Mac Hansen, they were both surprises for me coming in. I wasn't surprised that Henshaw was out. Good to see Tubialotto in as well. I think that was pretty straightforward. So I think the two really, James Ryan, I was happy with that he's back in, because I think he is quality, but it also said a lot against the locks and the backs. But the two, I think you've got to say is Mac Hansen especially, and Elliot Daly. I see no. What am I? Jesus, I'm a former club level prop. So what could I say against Mac Hansen? But you know the point I'm making. I know. I don't know what he brings in comparison to other people, and how he's been in the last 2 seasons. And I'm happy to be proved wrong. And for the rest of them,
who would you have in instead of him, Joe?
Darcy Graham.
Who's placed? Yeah. Darcy Graham has got injuries. I don't know.
And Tom Rogers.
Yeah.
Been playing brilliantly.
But Hansen's
he has been playing well for Saracens. So
hold on.
No, sorry.
Sorry. 1 sec, Joe. Go on, Nick. Go on.
I'm just saying, Hansen's injured, and he's going to be. They're giving him another 4 or 5 weeks. Like, how the fuck can you pick somebody that's injured? Like,
well, why couldn't you pick Doris then, Nick? Why couldn't you pick Doris?
Because I think Doris's issue is a serious issue. I think by the sounds of things, he could be out 6 or 7 months.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Go on. Sorry. Go on, Nick. Finish your point.
No, I'm just. I don't see how you can pick somebody that's injured. it's bizarre. You know what I mean? I think it's.
I mean, if they have a tattoo of your face on them, maybe you pick them, Nick. You know.
Handy for handy
I
if you lose your
agree
passport.
with Joe. I mean, Hansen and Elliot Daly. I don't know enough about backs, but I think Hansen's a great character. He certainly struggled this year. Tyg Furlong again. I'd say Finlay Beelan must be a little bit disappointed because
Yes.
I mean, 4 matches in a year. You know, at what point, Tyg is the best tight end in the world, but he looked quite out of pace there last weekend, and he wasn't on his own, so maybe that's not being fair, but I just don't see why,
I think, Nick, Tyg and Bundy will suffer physically on this tour simply because of their upward age profile. Yeah. That's all.
Do you think that they're lads for the experience to help the others, like Tig's there to more help Xander Ferguson and Will Stewart?
Well, something. Yeah, that could be it. But that might. I mean, you have a scrum
specialist.
Coach specialist. Well, but they don't have a scrum specialist. I suppose that's the problem. Maybe that's why there could be a reliance of having the 3 lads there. But I mean, that's probably not a fair thing to say. But I wouldn't be the first person to say it. I mean, I think the one area where Ireland has actually been, dare I say it, not as good as everyone else in the Six Nations has been scrum time. We've been notably poor for the last 3 or 4 years, and I would have thought Adam Jones. I was very surprised Adam Jones actually wasn't brought out as a but maybe that's because there's going to be so many Irish. Maybe the Irish are going to be in take up most of the pack, certainly the front 3. And maybe that will, that in itself will solve a problem. But
But you see, with a Toje a guaranteed starter, though, Nick, that kind of, as Joe was saying earlier, that kind of changes the whole dynamic of the back row and what Andy Farrell is going to do with Joe McCarthy and go on, Richard.
Well, just the first pair. Just when you said that, I told you a guaranteed start. Ty Byrne is the first person that popped into my head. Where would he go? Where are they going to fit him in?
Ty Byrne will be, I would imagine, second row, and I'd say.
But then you got Pollock and you got Josh van der Fleer. They both play in the same position. So this is, as I said in a thing, I'm so looking forward to the first test and the back row selection and how that's going to work and the dynamic of it. Josh van der Fleer, Pollock, Toje, Conan, like Tyg Byrne, this is. Who'd be a coach? Who'd be a bloody coach?
Well, this is why he's getting paid for it, I suppose. That kind of way. Plus, he with the Irish players, I suppose he knows what he's getting because he's coached them. But there's an awful lot of it would be, I guess, just going on seeing them play.
And also, too, the bench is so important. So I mean, if you get it wrong. Initially, you short up after 40 minutes or 50 minutes,
True. But Richard, come back to the original question that I asked Joe and Nick. Any surprise omissions or inclusions on your behalf?
Not really. Well, Hansen going in because to me, Hansen hasn't been the same player since the injury, since you done the shoulder. That's the honest. He hasn't been the same player. But he's there. He could be there. That's probably not the right way to put it, but he could be there for the entertainment value, for the fun and the crack.
No, I don't know. Jeez.
No, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean, but
he's not. He's almost certainly not guaranteed to be a starter in any of the test matches, I think.
I don't think he will, Richard. I'd agree with you.
Yeah. So, like, you do need a little bit of someone to build camaraderie, for want of a better thing.
And he's Australian.
And he's Australian.
Same as Tubiolotto. So
true.
Could be some of that,
Okay.
Isn't it?
Well, that's very true, Joe. Okay, Richard. Sorry, did you make your point? Sorry, Richard.
No, just again, Elliot Daly. He's there for the boot, really, isn't he? I mean, he's not a bad player, but
Richard James has a fucking boot on him as well. So
not for place kicking.
Not for place kicking. Elliot
Daly,
yes.
Sorry, yes. Okay, yeah.
He will slot the 60-meter with change, Elliot Daly. To be fair to him,
Yeah. All right. Dara Weston. Thanks, Richard. Your thoughts?
Yes.
Any surprise omissions or inclusions? I'll come to the comments now after Dara. I see them all coming in.
Yeah, I thought there might be a remote chance of Owen getting in as number 10. I mean, he's doing a job over there in Racing, and he's eligible. So and he's there's some relatively young number 10s going out. So I thought maybe an experienced head. Okay, you could say Finn Russell is an experienced head, but he's also an Egypt, a bit like Zebo. Like, he likes to act the town, and so
he's uncoachable, Dara. He's uncoachable.
Yeah, you wouldn't really trust him with young players. No. So, but yeah, I was and surprised then Mac as well. As Richard said, as everybody said, he hasn't quite been the same since he came back from injury, either with Ferrari or Connacht. But look, hopefully he'll find that form again when he's over in Australia and prove us all wrong.
All right. Okay, before we move on, there was another thing I wanted to say here. Sorry, just a few comments coming in. Bevan is in Galway. Hi, Bevan. How are you? Ian Gilbert. Joe, Ian. Hi from Madrid. Hello, Ian. How are you? Alan Dorman, Elliot Daly, and Mac Hansen was a big surprise for me. Yes, I think we all mentioned that. Ian Gilbert again. Darcy Graham for Hansen, but Hansen knows Farrell's system of play.
Well, there is that. That's actually true. Yeah,
there is Ian Gilbert or Femi Waboso if he was fit. Yeah, I don't know if he is actually. Bevan, I agree with Hansen and Daly, but I do think it will be good for Ireland, as I think it will be Ford and Henshaw at centre and Jamie Osborne and Nash on the wing, with potentially O'Brien at 15 and T. O'Brien on the bench. I don't know what that is referencing.
That's
to
for the summer tour.
The summer tour. Yeah, sorry. Okay. PJ Hennigan. Hi, PJ. Jack Willis, surprise. Yes, that is one player. Now, hold on.
He'll get called up.
Yeah, he will get called up. But someone sent me a message, gentlemen. Nick, I'll ask you first. Now, I don't know how true this is, but this person sent me a message, asked me, was Pollock in there because Doris is injured?
I think he would have gone anyway, regardless. I think.
Okay,
Pollock,
Nick,
he's shown enough.
Okay, Nick.
Interesting. In fairness,
yeah.
I can see. You need. I think for optics, he'll certainly be a crowd pleaser for the Wednesday matches. I think he's an exciting player. He's only a child, really. What is he? 20 years of age.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. I don't know, frankly.
Okay, Joe, is Pollock in there because Doris is injured?
No, I think what he's shown all season and of late, and last week probably cemented it. I think you got to say who lost out because he's been playing so well, and I think the other Curry brother probably lost out, and Pollock. And I think Pollock, you want to take someone like Pollock, because we talked about bolters on our episode 1. There's somebody that comes through that you don't really expect. Blair Murray was going to be another one potentially at fullback. So Pollock, you've got to have Pollock in. Jesus, the lad is he's a youngster going out. He's just like Jesus, Nick. You must remember when you were 20, even as a prop, you just ran out. Richie, you would have been the same. Dara and me, we just ran out and ran ourselves bloody stupid. Like we were just unleashed on 50 cans of Red Bull type of thing. That's what the lad does, but he's just got a natural gifted ability. The fact that he'll get gripped by somebody in the squad. Somebody will have to mentor him because he's going to do something that we'll remember not. But what a gifted player. You can't not take somebody like Henry Pollock on.
No, it's a bit. And years ago, allegedly, I can't remember, but they used to always bring Lions. There'd always be an uncapped Lions Lion in the squad. Yeah, and it's just you're just kind of throwing it in and just but the experience for some of these lads is just going to be apt to. And actually, for Pollock, like he'll be in a confined situation for 14 weeks, and I'd say that'll knock fucking corners off now, and he'll come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. would you start Richard, Dara? I'll come to you now. 1 sec. Nick and Joe, would you start Pollock over Josh van der Fleer? They both play on the side.
Not for the first test, I don't think. No.
So you'd have Josh. You'd have Josh on the first test, Nick.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Joe.
You wouldn't have Pollock, no. I think it's got to be between Josh and Jack Morgan, because it depends, because you're looking at 3 specialist 7s.
Yeah,
and again, go back to, I don't think it's the player. I think it's how Andy is going to play his locks in the back 3 for that first test, and I think that will dictate it more than the player. I think Pollock will. That's right. I think Pollock will get a couple of the midweek games, and it'll be huge experience for him and all round. But he's not a test starter, I don't think. When you've got the likes of the others, because you've got specialist 7s and then you've got players who can play across the back row, and that's the difference. So he's not going to start. No, mate, not in a test. I don't think.
All right. Okay. Richard Holland, your thoughts on all this?
I would be going with Van der Fleer. Not that Pollock is not a tremendous player and a massive talent, but I would be going with, certainly for the test matches, definitely for the first test, I'd be going Van der Fleer.
But the original question was, do you think Pollock is there because Caelan Doris is injured?
No, I think he's there on his own. He's on his own merit. He has shown enough that he's earned his spot there. I'll be honest with you. He's prodigious.
Okay, very good. Dara Weston, your thoughts on all this? The Pollock's inclusion because of Doris's injury, and who would you start? Van der Fleer,
all this load of Pollocks. I
very
think
good.
Certainly the fact that they turned Leinster over didn't do him any harm.
All right. I don't want to talk about that just yet.
Look, it fucking pains me.
We're not there yet, no.
To say that, but like, would his name have been on Farrell's list? Would he have been inside the 38 before Saturday? Possibly not. He might have been, just outside the group that were getting on the plane. That probably helped him, and then obviously Doris getting injured as well helped as well. So. Yeah, look, what worries me with young lads like this is, it's great flair and talent and all that, but consistency, that's the thing.
Yeah.
If you're only 20, you've no consistency, you've no kind of track record behind you. And, he could go over there and spend half the time with Marcus Smith talking about modelling contracts and stuff like that,
for Jesus' sake,
proper training. So.
I remember when I was 20, I had no clue.
About modelling contracts.
I just I bet everything, Nick. I bet everything.
And what about now?
I still don't have.
There's a couple of security staff from Club 92 would beg to differ on that now.
Yeah, we won't go there. That was said to you in confidence. Now, you can't be talking about that. Now, PJ Hennigan. Sorry, folks. A few comments coming in. Mike Reedy. Andy likes Mac. It may kickstart Hans's career. That's what you were saying, Joe, or Nick. One of you was saying it. Pollock was selected as a bolter from our good friend Matt Boland, and Mike Reedy is also our good friend as well. Brian Core, I think Pollock will give a great energy to the squad, as will Hansen. As for starting, Andy Farrell likes what he likes. It could happen. I don't know. Actually, Nick, do you think Finn Smith played himself into the line selection after his performance against Leinster?
Yeah, I think not only that. I think anyone that watched him the week prior, he's probably slightly more complete than Sam. I think the worst thing that could happen to Sam, he could go over to the Lions and make maybe make a little bit of a twit out of himself, and and that could be, Sam needs to just. He's had a huge year. He's a fantastic player. He's a chap, and he just needs, the tour, the Ireland tour, do him absolutely wonders. And also, too, there's a few, I think the few poor matches, and you'd have to say he did play a couple of poor matches. That shouldn't do him any harm. That should be, the person that doesn't make mistakes has never played, and it's making yourself better and getting more air miles on the clock. And he didn't deserve to go in this tour. Full stop. I don't think so.
But Nick, the critics will say, but Finn Smith is only a year older than Sam Prendergast.
But just look how he's playing. He's just like listen, whenever I talk about props. I don't listen. I would, in my simplistic view, Finn Smith would seem to be able to control a match. That's a very simplistic view.
That's the key. Yeah, that is the key. You're right, Joe. Your thoughts on this? Finn Smith, did he play himself into the line selection after the semi-final against Leinster, or would you agree with Nick?
I think he cemented his place. If I'm honest,
right. Okay.
I don't think Owen Farrell was never going to get called up, but might come in as a reserve. George Ford was out of the running for me. Prendergast was never going to. I think Sam Prendergast is a fucking brilliant, outstanding player, but there are elements of his game that needs to be worked on. And if you throw him into, he hasn't got the rounded ability that Finn Smith or the Henry Pollocks have got. He hasn't got that, and therefore he will be better sourced staying here, going on the Irish tour, getting more experience, bulking up a little bit, and that's what Sam needs to do. Not be thrown into something like this. So Finn Smith, I think, cemented his seat on the plane, but he was always going to be in contention to go. I think he is a much more rounded, gifted player. I really do.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Thanks, Nick. Dara Weston, your tuppence worth on Finn Smith.
Yeah, look, I think I think he was thereabouts. He was probably in there before the Leinster match anyway. I mean, as the lads, as Nick said and Joe said as well, I'm actually, Sam has plenty more chances. He's only 22. He's plenty more chances to go on Lions tours. I mean, purely selfishly looking at it from a Leinster point of view, Ross is gone now. Frawley, his confidence has gone, and so he's kind of being rehabbed at the moment. If Sam had had a bad Lions tour, who would we have to kick? It's so I think it going away with Paulie wherever they're going. Is it South Africa they're going to on the summer tour? But anyway,
George,
I don't think it'll. Oh, is it okay? I don't think it'll do him any harm. Plenty of time for Lions yet. I mean, he's only given it's his first year, kind of proper international rugby. I think it's still there's still loads of time for him.
All right, Richard Holland, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, I think Finn Smith was there or thereabouts after the Six Nations anyway. The Heineken Cup has certainly, that more or less cemented his place. Prendergast will be a Lions tourist. I have no doubt about that. But I think this particular tour is just a year, maybe 18 months too early for him. But he definitely will be a Lions tourist.
I was actually surprised, gentlemen, that Marcus Smith got a call up. Anyone want to comment on that? Or I'll just throw it out there.
He can cover fullback, you see, as well. So there's a little bit of that in it. He can cover multiple positions. So if you do pick up an injury, you have someone to come in that can fill fullback.
Yeah, maybe so.
And he seemed to have been totally written off.
He did, Nick. You're right. He did.
You're right. He was just kind of sidelined, and I must say, yeah, I was very much surprised, and that's where I thought maybe. You're saying Ford wasn't going to be considered. Farrell, I think the optics of Farrell picking his son, I think, especially when he played that level, I think even worse than Richie Murphy picking his for Ulster,
Yeah, they'd be shouting nepotism, and especially if the tour goes badly.
Yeah.
Listen, following on from Warren Gatlin picking a shitload of Welsh fellas who shouldn't have been on the plane, I don't think he couldn't have done any worse, really.
Joe, were you surprised that Marcus Smith was included? I certainly was. I didn't think he was going to go.
Yeah, no, it was one of my three to go, along with Finn Russell, Finn Smith, Marcus Smith, because Marcus can cover the back.
Oh, you're such an English player, rugby lover.
I think he's got a dynamic player. I don't think England have served him well, to be fair, because he was doing well at 10. Then he moved to the back because they wanted to then bring Finn Smith on. And he's adapted. And whenever he's come on, he's played well. He's a good all-round. His situational awareness, he is one of those 10s. There's very few 10s who can play 10 and 15. Because you're talking about the Richie Mo'unga and the Bowden Barrett scenario here. Both world-class 10s, but Richie can't play 15. Whereas the 15 can look and see the situational awareness of the whole game. And I'm talking as a fucking prop, lads. And that's the difference for me. I always liken it to, what can a 10 do? What can a 10 and 15 do? And so I think he's adapted well to being hoofed from 10 to 15 for England when Stewart isn't in there. And so for me, he was going to be on the plane, but number 3 in that pecking order after Finn Russell at 1 and Finn Smith at 2.
Right. Okay. As a former 13 outside centre player, I think Marcus Smith is he's like Finn Russell and he's like Mauro Itoje. I think the whole lot of them are spoofers. Right? Get that out of the way. Right?
I thought
he's another back, basically, is what you're saying.
I am a back. Yeah, I was fixing my hair as the scrums were going on, as you might say, Dara. Yeah.
He was lining up modelling assets, or but the modelling agency. That's what he was doing.
Yeah, I was modelling balaclavas when I was younger.
To get on to the serious matter, did you see how much the lads are going to make on the tour?
Yes,
so
I did.
Been a new profit sharing agreement negotiated, and they're guaranteed 100 grand whether they play or not.
Wow.
And their club gets 100 grand as well, and that can go up to 200 grand based on how much the Lions make.
Ooh.
So Connacht are going to make at least 200 grand, and Munster are only going to make 100 grand.
And Leinster are going to make a lot of cash.
We won't talk about that. Leinster have too much money.
Talk about that. Okay, a few comments. Alan Dorman in Madrid, I think. No, that's not Alan. Alan Dorman. Looking at the back row balance, I think it was either Doris or Conan. Actually, by the way, I'm delighted Conan is going.
Yeah. Conan is very underrated. You know, he's always there. He's Mr. Consistent.
He is. Mike Reedy, what's Mike Reedy saying? Yeah, Berkey, we've seen the photos of you at 20 years old, boys' own material. I highly doubt that. Mike Reedy, Finn Smith deserves. Yeah, as someone says, you're like One Direction. You're in the band, No Direction. Mike Reedy, Finn Smith deserves his pick. Sam, nowhere cheat the cauldron of a Lions 10 spot yet. Smith definitely booked his ticket on the plane Saturday. Mike, would you get out of bed, will you? Finn Smith cemented his. Yeah, you've said that already. Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's just hide
new that. Hip. It's increased his typing ability.
Yes, that's why we call it. That's why we call him Shakira. The hips don't lie. All right. Okay, Mike. Good man. Recovering from your hip operation. All right. Fair play to you. All right, Nick. Let's just move on from the lines because Jesus Christ, we're coming up to 50 minutes. Nick, I want to ask you about Leinster's performance against Northampton and what you think happened. Leinster had two. Who was that they played? They nilled. It was a Harlequins and who was the other team that they nilled? And then they come out. Glasgow. Then they come out against Northampton. I was at the game. And it just crashed and burned in the first 40. Their defence was nowhere. There was gaps. I remember, I think I said it. I was looking at it from where the vantage point I was at. I think there was 5 or 6 times out wide. There was 4 on 3, 3 on 2 openings.
Giggity.
And I was just giggity. And I was just thinking to myself, where is this legendary Leinster defence? And then the big names didn't stand up, didn't stand out. You could name on probably one hand the players that had a good game. Nick, what did you think of that performance?
Well, I go back. I watched them playing against Bristol the week before. So they had a game the week before. And actually came out, finished that, and they were just unbelievable. I said, Jesus, have these lads put too much energy into this match? They have a huge match the following week. But maybe the fact that they had the match, I mean, did Leinster peak 2 weeks too early? If. But Leinster looked knackered. I mean, there's a few times I turned the sound off the telly and I just followed the front 5 across the pitch, following the ball. And it just reminded me when we used to play France years ago. How'd you beat an Irish side in our time? You just run them ragged, left to right. And they just seemed to, they didn't necessarily engage in an arm wrestle. All they were interested in was getting the ball out, flicking it across. Now, obviously, I mean, Pollock was probably instrumental in that. I mean, I think we didn't win the back row battle at breakdown. The defence, Northampton just stayed deep. And for some reason, again, I'm sure that's not the reason holes appeared. but they just seemed to be able to. I mean, the passing against Bristol, there was so many flat passes. So it was literally, was that forward or whatever? It was just so flat, which is very, very hard to defend. But Leinster just weren't in it. I mean, it was just, now you can say, listen, push came to shove. They should have taken their 3 points. But if they took their 3 points, would they have won the match afterwards? Maybe. I suppose you'd always have to say, you come with a couple of minutes to go, geez, you're very brave not to take your 3 points. But, if they lost, I think I was talking to somebody there. If you lost after that, you'd be saying Leinster bottled it by not going for the win, where they normally would just, go for your 5-yard line out and plant it over, But it was just.
What about, sorry, go on.
No, I'm just saying it was very, very uncharacteristic of Leinster. And then I think when Doris went off, I don't know who was captain when Doris went off, because I remember coming back to the 3 points, you could nearly see Conan kind of hands out, looking up at the stands, saying, "What the fuck do we do, lads?" You know what I mean? So I don't know whether that was just bad optics, but I think maybe the core issue is you go back to the complacency probably from the prior week, because I mean, everyone, as they say, there's 20,000 Leinster tickets going to watch the final. The crowd, Graham, people say that, there wasn't that many people in the stand. Well, there was 42,000, which is fantastic, because a lot of lads are just waiting for the final. Maybe it was complacency. Now, you would have thought, because Leinster are so professional, how did this happen? But, I don't think anyone actually thought that Leinster were going to lose this. It really was, Jesus, what's the spread going to be? So
yeah. No, I totally agree with you, Nick. I totally agree with you. Yes, I think you're spot on in your analysis there. Joe Shep.
Actually, Peter, can I ask Nick? Nick,
yeah, go on. Go on.
There's been a lot of talk about this. I mean, do you think the selection had a part to play in it? Like, I'm a Clontarf man, but I was very surprised to see Cian Healy start over Porter, knowing that you're not going to get. You might get a half out of Cian, but I know it's his last season.
Yeah. Well, they did the same thing, I think, they brought young Boyle on there for 10 minutes against one, I don't know what the match was, and then took him off after 10 minutes. Kind of turned around saying, what the fuck's happened there? Barrett, why wasn't Barrett starting? Again, I mean, there's whispers there that maybe the powers from above said, listen, we want the 2 Irish boys to be starting in the centre because there's a Lions selection coming in next week. Now, maybe that's just too simplistic in itself, but, more than one person just mentioned that to me.
Apparently, Nienaber said he was asked that, and he said, no, we weren't told. But then you wouldn't know whether they would say if they were told or asked.
Yeah.
It might be implied.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah, I couldn't get over that either.
Okay. Let me just move on to. No, you're right. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Nick. Joe, your overall thoughts on Leinster's performance in the semi-final yet again?
It's a fucking dichotomy, isn't it? I mean, there's no way a team of world-class individuals who usually play as a world-class team can turn up like that and just be taken apart. There were so many things going wrong there. Let's not take it away from Northampton. Northampton, I thought it would be close. I thought we'd get across the line, but I thought it'd be close, and I thought they had the capabilities. But how they walked through us like a knife through butter is beyond me. I've watched it back a couple of times, and I still cannot put my finger on what the problem was. It was disjointed. There was no leadership when Caelan Doris went off. And it was in next right. It was way before. I remember seeing that one on the 3 points, and Jack's look. The optics was dreadful, but it happened on a number of occasions. The Henry Pollock try, we were flat. We stood still. On saying we were flat, we played this blitz defense quite a lot, but there was no time and time again. We were going into the breakdown, and it was single players, and then they had 3 or 4. We've seen that a couple of times over the last season or so where we've done that. I don't know. I genuinely can't put my finger on just why there were so many things. Was this complacency? Were we waiting for, some of the lads didn't want to get injured maybe?
Well, that's in fairness, Joe. I was actually just thinking that as you were talking, saying, listen, back when we played England the night before selection, you can be fucking sure that the back of your mind is, lads, Jesus, Lions is coming up here. I do not want to get injured. I do not want to get a red card. You know what I mean? Blah blah blah.
That's why you took him into the cleaners the night before, because a lot of that mindset has got to be there. Surely,
Yeah.
you know, we've all been in those situations where like, fuck it, I'm not gonna risk this too much. But there were so many things. I think there was partly of that. I did the mothership say about Geordie Barrett. We never get over that, but that was my first assumption, that we wanted to give Henshaw and Ringrose a final opportunity because there was people watching, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I just don't know. But there was just so many different things. We just weren't cohesive. There was lack leadership. We didn't have a plan B. The blitz defense was taken apart. It was just so many different things. I don't know whether I'll personally ever be able to put my finger on one single thing.
Yeah. All right. No, fair enough, Joe. Richard Holland, your thoughts on that performance?
Now this is coming from a Munster fan, but
I know.
It'll be short and sweet then.
Yeah. So my wife tells me.
Go on out acting.
Look, Munster or Leinster just didn't show up. It was,
Shocking.
and I've seen a lot of Leinster this year, and whether it was complacency, I don't know what it was, but they just didn't show up. It was, they were at 6s and 7s in defence. I think for the Pollock try, there was a gap between Snyman and I think it was Porter that you could have got a bus through.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that Munster never. Though subsequently Pendergast fell off the tackle, or he didn't fall off it. He didn't make the tackle.
Yeah.
But it was just not the Leinster that you see week in, week out. And I again, as Joe said, I can't put my finger on that. I don't know why. It's just.
But it seemed, Richard, to be a complete sea change from previous games, and then they come out and do this.
Not even from the previous games, for the entire season.
Well,
or be
maybe,
it, granted, when they went out, they were beat down.
Well, except for Scarlets.
But that was a
most of those lads were arrested for the Scarlets game.
Yeah.
Sorry, Richard.
You know, I just can't get my head around it. I just don't understand it. Now that being said, I don't understand why the bookies were offering a 19-point spread on it. Because it was always going to be a closer game than 19 points.
Oh, was it that much? I didn't realise it was that much.
That's what the bookies were offering, a 19-point spread. That was never going to happen. Because like it or lump it, Northampton are a good team. You know, they were a class act.
Okay. Now, before we go on to our very last point, because we're fast approaching the hour mark, I just want to briefly, gentlemen, your opinion on this. This has been a bone of contention for me and for us on the show. I'm not going to say anything about it. I'll say nothing, but I'll ask you guys. Nick, the ticket pricing for the Australia and the South African games coming up in November. For the Australia, I just want your opinion on this, and just let me know what you think, if the IRFU are making a mistake, or if they're shooting themselves in the foot, or if it's fair or whatever. Right? That's all I'm looking for. The top price ticket, Nick, for the Australia game is €172. The cheapest ticket, Nick, there's no kids option here now, is €77. For the South Africa match, Nick, the most expensive ticket is €202. And the cheapest ticket is €107, Nick. Are the IRFU going about this the right way?
I suppose they've bills to pay, haven't they? And they've wages to pay.
Don't we all?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All those former player pensions.
All those former player pensions, yeah, right.
There you go, Nick.
No, but I mean, it's. I mean, you go back. I'm not going back to the old days, because you could stand on your feet, and at least the country cousins could pay the £5 or the £20. But it's got. Listen, that's only the start of it. I mean, the €200 to get into the pitch or into the Aviva, or the 170, you have to get the car up, the car back, maybe the hotel, maybe the grub, it's literally, it's like nearly a weekend away. You know what I mean? Listen, what do England charge? Is it, you'll probably find it's going to be fairly.
I don't know.
It's just, that's the way it's gone, and if people are going to pay it, well, why would you charge any cheaper? You know what I mean? You can say, grand, the ordinary fan can't get in there. Well, I think that kind of scenario has gone out the door many years ago, because it just has got so expensive. Because it's not €170, because most of the time, you're going with somebody else and then maybe a couple of kids. So you're timesing it by 3 or 4, and then it's.
And then you got your food, Nick. You got your food, like you were saying, overnight stay. And
as you get older, you go to Searsons or somewhere. You get the noise, you get the atmosphere, and you get it for £100 a man, and you're going to have a good night out of it, Yeah. But it does. Okay. Nothing is cheap anymore. I mean, you're going into. I don't want to be fucking blasé about it, but Jesus, sure, everything has just gone absolutely.
No, I know. I know exactly the point you're making, Nick. Yeah, Joe, any thoughts on the ticket pricing? And
yeah, firstly, the average in international Twickenham is between 50 and 163. Average ticket price therefore is about 70. I don't go to internationals anymore. I don't go to any. I have a huge issue about, and that's before the tickets are hyped up, by the way, by any of the resellers. And that's another thing. There's 2 things guaranteed to get me to fucking lose my rag. One is ticket prices, and the other one is Gatland's geographical rugby for the Lions. So we'll keep away from it. I just think it's scandalous. I think you're pricing ordinary people out of the market. I think there's too much going into the corporates that aren't used, people who don't appreciate the rugby. And I don't see it changing, though. I really don't see it changing. I appreciate they've got big bills to pay and stuff like that. But if you want to build rugby from the ground up, then I don't know what the answer is. But it is grossly overpriced for what it is. When you could go away for a week for 1,500. Well, Jesus, if there's 2 of you going up to Dublin for the day and you go for the weekend and make a weekend, that's a week's holiday somewhere. You just wouldn't do it anymore. I wouldn't do it anymore.
202 euros, Joe, for a ticket to go and see South Africa.
No. Not when again, the whole thing is mismanaged. I didn't even want to get into the whole fucking semi-final of last year, 82,300 when it was run by Leinster, a croker. This year, 40,000 when it was run by EPCR. Why? Yeah. Well, a cynic might say that the EPCR thought, fuck me, lads, quid's in here, 82,000, we can make a fucking killing. We'll take on the tickets. They completely ballsed it up. They couldn't sell any. Then they had to drop them from 75 or 80 euros down to 30 to 40, then to 33. And yeah, 40,000 is okay. Nick's probably right. One eye on a lot of people going to Cardiff, but even so, that was just greed for me, and nobody will be able to convince me differently. Had Leinster been running it, I think it would have been totally different again, and you probably would have had an awful lot more like we did last year.
All right. Okay. Dara, before I come to you on your position on this, just a few comments. Mike Sheedy. Leinster, they should have go for the points, beat a draw, never know, beat Northampton, 3 players on RG Snyman and also players end of the best. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Mike Reedy, ticket pricing is a direct consequence of our finishing position in the Six Nations. Finishing outside of winning had a deficit of €4 million. Good point, Mike. Yes, good point. Megan Augusta. Hi, Megan. It's outrageous. The total cost of everything from match day is nearly costing the same as a week's holiday. I think you were saying that, Joe. I agree with Nick. Everything, no matter what, it has gone so expensive. Sure, that's inflation and capitalism for you. Yes. Okay. All right. There we go. Go on, Dara. Your quick point on this, because we've one more. The games
correct our esteemed colleague, Mr. Reedy. We actually lost 2 million by not winning the Six Nations. The extra 2 million we would have got had we got a Grand Slam. But I suppose
he won't like you criticizing him, Darren. He won't like you criticizing him.
No.
Don't poke the bear.
But anyway, look. I mean, look. If the IRA can, if the IRA can sell the tickets,
hello.
The phrase kind of "make hay while the sun shines" comes to mind. I mean, it's not like they're charging massive money for the tickets and then they're all going to Patrick Gilbo's for lunch. In fairness, the money is making its way down to grassroots rugby also, through provincial rugby officers and things like that. And it's going into the provinces as well. Irish rugby's on a crest of a wave. Irish football is shite. So all the corporate crowd, they can sell out the Aviva nearly with corporate tickets alone, you know. So I mean, you know, why wouldn't they put up the prices if they can? Because you know there will come a day possibly when they can't sell it out. When we're not doing so well.
No, I totally agree, Darry. Yeah, it's a peaks and troughs and all that sort of stuff. Richard Holland, briefly, your opinion on this before we go on to our last topic.
Look, to me, it's €202. It's mental. Like, you know, if you have a wife and a couple of kids, you would literally get flights and accommodation to Lanzarote in November for more or less the same price. So why the fuck would you? You know, that would be my view on it. Now, to me, it's gone beyond it. I mean, I was at a match. I was at the Argentina match in November, and basically I was standing up all day, every day with lads walking by, going to the bar and getting drink, walking back, getting drink, walking back, getting drink. I actually missed one of the tries because there was a fella standing in front of me trying to walk.
That's an age-old problem, Richard. Though that's a
I know, but I heard it said, I have no real interest in the rugby. I'm only here for the session. What the fuck, like, you know, that's another problem that's there. And one of the problems that I have with the matches is the kickoff time, 8:30. What the fuck? So if you're traveling from wherever, it could be 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning by the time you get home if you can't get a hotel.
But Richard, as Dara said before, Dara, I think you just did say this. It's the TV commercial rights holders who decide the kickoff times of games. But that's one of the problems.
For me, it's too late. I'll be honest with you now. 8:30.
Yeah, no. For a lot of people traveling, it's too late.
The unions could push back on the TV schedules. They mightn't get as much money off the TV companies. But if a match kicks off at 8:30, it's 10:30 by the time you're getting out of Lansdowne. If you're going to the M50, it's probably midnight by the time you get near the M50, getting out of Ballsbridge and everywhere.
True.
And then so you're going down to Munsterland. That's another 3 hours. You know.
Yeah, so and then you're stopped at the passport check, you know, to get out of Dublin.
You're hoping they haven't taken the road.
Let's get the car sprayed for all the dub germs.
Car sprayed and all that stuff. I know, it's terrible.
Fill up with green diesel.
Gentlemen, we're way over time, but I just want to get quickly through win, lose, or draw. The game's coming up this weekend. Nick, I'm coming to you first on this. The 3 games coming up, the 4 provinces are in action. First up, Nick, in the order they're happening, Munster are entertaining Ulster. Who's winning, who's losing, who's drawing?
Munster win.
Jesus, you're very quick on that now, Nick. All right. Nick.
Go on.
Leinster are entertaining Zebra.
Leinster.
All right. And Connacht are entertaining Edinburgh. Indeed.
Can I ask a friend?
No.
Connacht.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Thanks, Nick. Joe Shep. Munster entertaining. In the order they're happening, Munster entertaining Ulster.
Ulster. 100%. They've the strongest match day 23 they've had probably this season.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Joe. Leinster v Zebra.
Leinster, and I expect Leinster to put a fucking proper decent team out.
They have to, Joe. They have to, because if they don't, they will lose the confidence in the fans.
I've heard they are, because I've talked to a young fella there that's on the fringe, and he was saying, no, from now on in, big guns are there, full stop, end of.
Excellent. Okay. Good to hear, Nick.
Edinburgh.
I haven't even fucking asked you yet, Joe. Go on. Connacht v Edinburgh.
Joe, props stick together, bud.
Connacht, when you won one of my shows, Connacht.
You're decidedly outnumbered here tonight.
So you're going Connacht, Joe? Yeah, Connacht.
We'll go Connacht, yeah.
Connacht. All right, okay. All right, Dara Weston. Munster playing. I love that. Munster playing Ulster. Go ahead.
As much as I'd love to see Richie get a win, I have to fucking say Munster. Otherwise, I won't be allowed back in the house. Yeah,
because you're married to a Cork. I can't keep forgetting about that.
So am I. Don't worry about it.
So you. Okay. All right. Dara, Leinster are playing Zebra.
Leinster. Jesus, we have to get some silverware this season now.
True. Okay. And finally, Dara, Connacht are entertaining Edinburgh out west.
I mean, if this good weather keeps up, it could be Edinburgh, because like Connacht, home advantage, and then they do well in shit weather. Rain and big winds, and that's whereas they won't be used to playing in this sunny weather in the sports ground. So I go for Connacht. Yeah, I go for Connacht.
All right. Okay, Richard Holland, last voice on the show tonight. Munster, your team playing Ulster.
It's a must-win for Munster, and I think they will do it. They will do it. Yeah.
Okay. Leinster playing Zebra.
Thoughts and prayers to Zebra. I think that'll be a massacre.
Okay. And finally, Richard, Connacht are entertaining Edinburgh.
I think Edinburgh are going to win that one. Just Connacht just haven't got the consistency this year. Connacht.
All right. Okay. Gentlemen, that is all we have time for. We've gone way over time as usual. My thanks are to Richard Holland, Dara Weston, Joe Shep, and keep an eye out for Joe's and mine notifications about the next line show that is coming up. I'm sure you'll see it and you'll be notified by it. And also our special guest. He's been on the show before. He is no stranger to us here, and we will gladly have him on again.
He's a fucking legend.
Popplewell. He is a legend. He is a legend. Nick
Thanks,
Popplewell, thank you very much for your time and your contribution, your opinions and your comments. And thanks to you all who watched and had a comment and all that sort of stuff. We'll be back again next Thursday. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks, folks, and good luck.
Good luck, lads.
See you, lads.
Right. Start.